In December of 2025, a man stood in a Thurston County courtroom and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Again. Nicholas Joseph Denham had already been sentenced once for murdering a 34-year-old mother and her 4-year-old daughter. That conviction should have been the end of the story, a point where the court process stopped and the families left behind could begin the slow work of healing. Instead, a procedural error during jury selection sent the case back to the beginning. A second trial, a second verdict, a second life sentence. And for the families, a second reopening of wounds that never truly closed. This is Unsaid Case Files. This episode is not about courtroom drama or legal technicalities. It's about how rejection turned into control, how access turned into violence, and how justice, even when it arrives, can come far too late to feel like peace. Before this case became a headline, before it became evidence exhibits and autopsy reports, there were two lives moving quietly through the world. Charlene Van Auken was 34 years old. She was a mother, a friend, someone known by people close to her as generous, sometimes to a fault. Someone who opened her home when others were struggling. Charlene was raising her daughter, Zoey Peetz, a 4-year-old little girl whose entire world was still small and centered around safety, routine, and trust. Zoey was 4 years old, still learning the world through routine and reassurance. Her days were built around familiar voices, familiar places, and the quiet certainty that the adults around her would keep her safe. Her father, Jordan Peetz, would later stand in court and describe a grief that does not lessen with time, only deepens as absence becomes permanent. Charlene and Zoey did not disappear into the night. They were taken by someone they trusted. Nicholas Joseph Denham did not arrive in Charlene Van Auken's life as a stranger or an obvious threat. At the time, he was unraveling. His romantic relationship with Melanie Newcomb had ended, and with it, his sense of stability. Newcomb worked at the Cedar Inn Tavern in Olympia, a place Denham knew well. She also legally owned several firearms, a .45 caliber Springfield XDS, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, and a .22 caliber revolver. Sometime after their separation, Newcomb began to notice signs that something was wrong. During a New Year's Eve gathering, she heard someone jumping her fence late at night. Weeks later, she realized her firearms were missing. She reported them stolen in early February 2020, providing serial numbers to police. Investigators would later confirm all 3 weapons were functional. Around this same period, Denham turned to Charlene. She gave him a place to stay. According to testimony, Denham gained her trust quickly, embedding himself into her home and daily life. But as weeks passed, Charlene began asking him to leave. Witnesses described a shift. The hospitality ended, and Denham did not handle rejection well. On the night of February 29th, 2020, into the early hours of March 1st, shots were fired outside the Cedar Inn Tavern, the bar where Denham's ex-partner worked. A bullet hole was later found in a window, No one was hit, but the message was unmistakable. Ballistics testing would later confirm that the bullet fired at the tavern came from the same .40 caliber firearm that would soon be used in a double homicide. Denham had access, he had motive, and he had a growing pattern of violence. In March of 2020, Charlene Van Auken and Zoey Peetz were in Charlene's black Chevy HHR. Charlene was seated in the driver's seat. She was wearing her seatbelt. Zoey was secured in her car seat behind her. Evidence would later show that the shooter was positioned in the front passenger seat. Charlene was shot in the forehead at point-blank range. Zoey was shot moments later. Her autopsy revealed something no parent should ever have to hear: that her arms showed signs consistent with defensive movement. Afterward, their bodies were dragged into blackberry bushes along a roadway in northeast Thurston County. They were left near a trail, discarded. On March 10th, 2020, a couple walking their dogs noticed something unnatural in the brush. They called 911. Deputies arrived to find Charlene's body partially unclothed, showing obvious head trauma. Zoey lay nearby. The scene made one thing immediately clear: this was not an accident. Investigators followed the trail backward. Ballistics testing tied the bullets from the Chevy HHR to the bullet fired at the Cedar Inn Tavern. Shell casings recovered from multiple scenes matched. All signs pointed back to the same stolen firearm. While in custody, Denham wrote letters, strange letters, written from the perspective of someone confessing to the murders. Later, he claimed they were an attempt to create reasonable doubt. But one line stood out: a statement about Zoey, that she wouldn't shut up. Prosecutors called it evidence of brutality, a lack of empathy. In 2022, a jury convicted Denham of aggravated first-degree murder, life without parole. But the conviction did not hold. An appeals court later ruled that a potential juror had been improperly dismissed, a technical error, one that forced a new trial. For the families, the damage was immeasurable. Jordan Peetz would later say the original conviction had given them a foundation of peace. The appeal took it away. In December 2025, a jury convicted Denham again, this time on 12 counts. 2 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. Under Washington law, the sentence was mandatory: life without parole. Judge Carol Murphy acknowledged the limits of the justice system. She said it could not heal, only conclude. Denham offered a brief apology. "I'm sorry. It was not enough. It never could be. This case is not about mystery. It is about entitlement. About a man who did not accept being told no. About the violence that follows when control is mistaken for love." Charlene Van Auken and Zoey Peetz did nothing wrong. Their names deserve to be spoken. Their story deserves to be remembered. Because the most important things in cases like this are often the ones left unsaid. I'm Johnny Black, and this has been Unsaid Case Files.